That's me. I'm there. Oh, make sure I have my thing muted. I do. Okay. So, hey everybody. Happy Sunday and almost full moon. Alexis says hello. Hi, Alexis. Ian says hi, hello, and welcome. Like, yay. We made it. Grumpy Owl says hello. Hi, Grumpy Owl. Lul says hi. Hi, Lul. Nice to see you. Ava says hi, Siofra. Hi, Ava. Everybody's jumping in. Yay. I like it. Alexis says, how are you first and foremost? Pretty good this week. Yeah, nothing untoward has happened. Although the rabbit was a bit of a terrorist this week. He's a rabbit, so it didn't hurt too much. Dan says hello. Hey everyone, happy Sunday. Hi Dan.
Yeah, the rabbit took a desire to jump in the middle of dinner plates while we're
eating. Still eating them. Oh, we're getting ice cream cones and hearts. All right. Thank you. We appreciate all the little lovies. They're good. And yes, he actually tried to take my food out of my mouth. I was eating a protein bar. He jumped up on my lap, grabbed the paper that it was around, and started to yank it out of my mouth. And I'm like, no, not rabbit food. He was laughing. But yeah, it's our local pool finally opened back up, so my daughter and I went swimming, and were terrorized by all the children. They really don't pay any attention to where you are, no matter their age, it seems, the teenagers, the young ones. It's just like we were constantly, trying to defend our space and make sure we didn't get run over, because no one else apparently was paying attention to where we were, so it was annoying.
Oh, one of the hazards of a public pool.
Yes, and Sheila says, hello from West Virginia, love you all. Hi, Sheila. Alexis says, I had a discussion with my boyfriend today about which holidays to celebrate with our potential future children, and curious which ones you celebrate. Well, I stopped celebrating Christmas and started celebrating the solstice probably in the 80s. And that helped me personally a lot. I mean, there's a lot of similar symbolism and so forth around the holidays, and I was able to get into the winter solstice aspect of it and still decorate, etc., and still did Christmas Day with my kids and whatnot. But for me, my best Christmases were ones I didn't notice happened until the next day or so, and I went, oh, okay. So for me, psychologically, it was a huge thing. Samhain, Halloween has always been a really important day for me, one of my favorite holidays, so we would celebrate that. And then Beltane was my other favorite holiday, and the kids loved dancing around a maypole. So, but we, in the mid 80s, we did a lot of stuff with the family. We did, all of the holidays pretty much, except maybe for Candlemas / Bridget's fire holiday, Emulk. That one I always had a little harder time getting in touch with somehow, because in my reading it was more for initiations and that kind of thing than for just general celebration. But then after that we started doing, making the Bridget's cross and stuff like that, and doing crafty things. So that was kind of fun. Alexa says, what is Beltane? May Day. That is a spring holiday halfway between the spring equinox and the summer solstice. And it's one of the days where the veil between the worlds is thin. And it's all about fertility and new life and flowers and dancing and celebration and fairies and all that kind of stuff. So it's like the opposite of Samhain, which is all about the dead and crossing over and going within and the dark and so forth. So I find it interesting that I like both of them equally. Lulu says, Christmas and Hanukkah both as respect to my biological background and not necessarily because of beliefs. Ruth says, hi all. Hi Ruth. Ava says, do you have any tips of studying things without feeling super overwhelmed? Because I've been feeling overwhelmed lately. Do it in small bites. Just take a small part of something. I mean, when you're learning, it's well known that the human brain can only absorb a certain amount of information, whether it's
rest.
Whether it's physical, like in learning like how to dance, or whether it's intellectual or brain power kind of thing. And so, keep that in mind, that you can absorb a bunch of stuff and then you need a break. And you need to just sort of relax and so forth. So that would be my tip. Jono says, hi. Hi, guys. Hi, Jono. Mary says, hi, Siofra and Ian. It's really feeling like summer here. Thundering now. How is the weather there? Very windy. It's
warm but windy.
It's going to be very hot inland in the next couple of days. I guess around Medford, they're thinking over in the hundreds, and up around Portland, right up to 100 degrees. So when it gets really hot inland, it pulls the coastal winds in. So we're really getting the coastal winds. So yeah, we have another couple of days of the high winds according to the weather people. We'll see what actually happens, reality being what it is.
Yeah. Pretty standard around here for this time of year though, and 4th of July is always overcast because of all the water being pulled inland from
the heat.
Yeah, so our 4th of July, you never can see anything.
Hardly ever. Every so often we have a clear year, but we don't really go see the fireworks anymore. There's too many people. And although I enjoy seeing the pretty lights in the sky, I don't like the noise, and I don't like the crowds, so I'm like, yeah. Although the 5th of July is our unofficial other anniversary. That was our first date. So, and I was thinking about this, and I think that it was right around spring equinox that was actually our first meeting. I think that pagan potluck was right around then.
I don't remember.
Or early April.
When.
Because I know I went to the Beltane celebration with them, and you were down in San Francisco, and I'd already met you.
Right. And I didn't think too much of going there because I didn't expect to be anybody interesting or anything, so.
Yeah. No, not 200 degrees. Up to 100 degrees. Sorry. Yes, that would definitely be a death sentence for pretty much everything alive. Unless you were living in a cave underground.
Yeah, well, we've been at, what was the hot temperature down there when we went in the
120.
cave? 120?
Yeah, between 110 and 120.
Good time to go hide in a cave where it's cooler.
Yeah, I am prone to heat stroke, so I have to definitely be careful of going out. We went for what we thought was a little bitty walk once, a couple times actually, and it turned into several miles and a lot of heat and a very bright red face, so... Yeah, it's dangerous.
Mostly hunting for caves and things.
Well, I think we were in Santa Cruz during one of those. We just went on a hike, and from the hotel we were staying in when we went down.
I remember you having the heat issues.
But yeah,
looking for caves out in the desert.
Right, because that's when we tended to go caving. Was during the summer, and the caves are all in hot places. Lava beds. They don't have much shade, that kind of thing. But yes. So Ava sent us a heart with hands, and Mary says, okay, that makes more sense. Yes, temperature wise. I'm not really trying to to lie. Yeah. Oh no, it's getting so hot, we're all gonna die.
200 degrees.
Yeah. But yes, so it's definitely been windy around here. And we've had weird stuff in our neighborhood area. We had a shooting that was about a mile or so from our house, and we had somebody a block away from us that the police came and arrested and took away. And So it's
Lots of stuff for a little bitty town. We seem to have a bigger proportion of weird things over here on the
it
coast.
seems like it.
Yeah.
Jono says one of the original not magic spells was sailors tying up high winds in knots so that when they needed wind they could untie a knot to get wind. Not sure what I would need wind for in my life. Well, there's
though.
people that
I didn't know
are
that.
sea witches. That's one of the things that they do is they tie up the wind in knots or the storm winds and then let them out later in the year, which is we can blame this on them. They tied up some winds in the winter and then they let them out now, so it's all their fault and I wish they'd stop it. But yes, there's certainly stories about that, and there was a guy we met who was in Tibet, and he came back here and was doing like a slideshow presentation and talking about some of the things he experienced. And one of the things the monks up there could do was control the wind. And they tried to show him how to do it, and of course he couldn't do it, and they all laughed and thought it was pretty funny. But he said they did. They just could tell the wind what to do, which was pretty cool. So I guess if you're raised in an environment where this is something that is considered accepted and normal.
What you do, you need to tie up a tornado in a knot. Then if you get pissed off at somebody, just like, there you go, aim it right at his house. Poof. Untie it.
But that's not the
No.
kind of thing we do,
Okay,
right?
sorry.
We don't do mean things to people. Even if we could do that, we wouldn't. Lulu says, I have 2 states, pale and peeling, so I avoid sun the best way possible. Yeah, that's probably me too. Yeah, I'm definitely not, I don't tan. You gotta definitely watch out for, skin cancer and whatnot. But
Yeah, plus it's just no fun to get a big
burn.
blisters from burns.
Oh, I've had a couple of good burns in my life. When I was young, their attitude was cover her with peanut oil and then put her out in the sun and then flip her over every so often and get her cooked on both sides. It's like, yeah, not very smart.
I got a use there. Now, when somebody goes to the bathroom and you need it to clear out fast, you just untie one of those knots in there and. Sorry.
Princess My Hand says you don't tell the wind, you ask it. I guess it depends on the culture you're from. I wouldn't, for sure.
Yes.
And we would ask, but if I was a Tibetan monk and I'd been raised in an environment where the wind did what I asked because we had a relationship with it for 1,000 years, then I would have a different attitude. So I try not to assume that one way is the only way things can be done. And Grumpy Owl says, in my experience, air elementals were inspiring my creative thought. This wind was blowing past my little house one night that made me write this beautiful poem. Ooh, nice.
Well, that's cool. That's definitely one of the things air elementals do. It's inspiration. Yeah. All that stuff, the inspiration, the muses, all that type of stuff is associated with air in general.
Well, as
far as having a muse.
Right, I think that the Greek muses, that was one of the ways they communicated too. Music is air, as well as, poetry and things like that.
Acting and, Broadway.
Seems like it would be an air kind of property.
All those inspirational, creative, artistic things are all air related.
Lulu says, oh, I've had actual blisters from the sun, they hurt.
Yes, they do.
And I don't want to control weather. Why would anyone be interested in that? Well, some people think that if they're in a drought and they want to call in the water to end the drought, that they're doing a service to their community. And certainly there's historical stories, rain dances that the natives would do at certain times. There's so many more people out there now, though. And, the pattern that we have is we go through a drought and then all of a sudden we're drenched. My theory is everyone is praying for rain in whatever style that they have, but they don't get answered until they get answered all at once. And if people would stop, maybe the weather would balance out. But, we've got climate change and all other stuff that's happening too, so it's not as simple maybe in that sense as it might have been in the past. There's a story in China where a town was having a terrible time with their town, and the guy they asked him to come and help, and so he moved out of town like a couple miles and stayed in the cabin to be right with the world and be in the right frame of mind. And when he did that, then the weather cooperated and everything worked well because things were in harmony. And that was the theory, was that the people in town were not harmonious, therefore the weather was not harmonious. But who knows? It was an interesting story, though, to read. Mary says, darn, my connection is going in and out. I think because of the storm. If I disappear, it's because of technical difficulties.
Miss Grumpy Owls there.
Grumpy Owl says, I have attracted air elementals from an Indian mound out in the country. That was an interesting experience. Yeah, that was. I'm surprised that Black Eagle, who I met at the Medicine Wheel in southern Saskatchewan, comes around and visits me every so often since then, so you never know.
I'm going to go get my earbuds, seeing people are starting to apparently have some sound issues
Again? Well, we couldn't find anything from our end. We think it's somewhere in the service. Tammy says there's a static type sound fading in and out here as well. Mary says, I started watching a movie last night called The Secret of Roan Inish about a man falling in love with a Selkie. I'm going to watch the end tonight. I think it's a sweet story. Yes, I remember. I can't remember it in detail at this point because it's been a long time since I watched it, but I remember really liking it a lot, and it was very Irish, and appropriately so. Julia says, hello, finally made it. Glad to be here on this hot day. Hi, Julia. Glad that you could make it. Jono says, I've stopped heavy rain from flooding my parents' house again. It flooded in December. Water was up to the bottoms of the doors when it stopped. Well, good. And you can often do things that are local and specific to an area. When I was teaching up at the prison, there was a hurricane heading towards Florida, and one of the inmates, his mother, lived in a house right in the path of the hurricane. So we did this protection shield kind of thing around her house, and her house was still standing, and the rest of the neighborhood was pretty much demolished. So I think sometimes that can work. Sundrop says, hi, what are your thoughts on demons and demon magic? Have you practiced it? Absolutely not, and I see absolutely no reason to get into it. It is a pointless exercise, and
there are positive beings that will do as much as all the demons will. The only thing you won't get from the positive beings that you will from the demons is the ability to hurt somebody.
Yeah, I don't recommend it. For one thing, I don't believe in the angel-demon pantheon, as in the Christian concept of it. And if I'm
getting it.
Are you getting the buzz?
Yeah.
It says it got worse when you moved.
Yeah, it stopped at the moment.
Lulu says, yeah, the static sound is here also. Sundrop says static. Alexis Allen, my boyfriend doesn't want our children to be outcast if we were to celebrate the solstices. Well, you could just go on a camping trip for the summer solstice, and who's going to know, right? Be secret about it. So I don't know. But yeah, we don't delve into demon magic on our channel at all. We have little experience with it, although we've met a few here and there.
Yeah, and it's just, you can do anything. Anything you want to accomplish, pretty much, you can do with the positive spirits in Barden's book, which I would highly recommend over doing any kind of demon magic. He's got more spirits than you'll find in the, quote, demonic hierarchies, unquote. And they're all more or less inclined to help, whereas the demonic ones will be more or less inclined to try to make you make a pact with them or do something for you to get an advantage or something. They're they're as trustworthy, I guess, as demons are supposed to be, although I agree they aren't necessarily demons, but beings that have a negative job to do. But still, Unless you want to do something negative, I see no reason to try and contact them.
Sundrop says, and how can I charge my selenite wand? Use it. Selenite doesn't need to be charged. It's constantly charging, and it charges other objects that are near it. So you don't have to like charge it up. But
there it is again.
If you want to be able to use it effectively, you can hold on to it and visualize the energy, the light coming out of it, and sort of tune into that, so you're sort of acquainted with it. Alexis says, I don't feel the same way. I really want to continue to learning about this type of stuff and actually celebrate the things that make sense to me. Maybe we should try turning off the heater again, see if that helps. Or it's the wind moving all the wires around, because it was really windy last time too.
No, this is like an electrical, it's like a little buzz. It bzzz.
Well, you are the specialist. I'll let you try and figure that out. Tammy says there are subtle ways to celebrate solstices. Yeah. Campfire in a campground, down at the beach, throwing things in it to let it burn away. You don't have to say what they are. Yeah, there's definitely ways you can celebrate them. Lewis says, I don't want to accidentally find myself in a situation where I am not in control. Thus, mostly nature, natural magic for me. Yeah. Well, I agree. Being in control, that's sort of the point, right? You don't want to put yourself in a position where you're giving over your power to some other force and putting it in charge of you. Yeah, totally. So Mark says, hi Siofra, I discovered you last night, and what a coinky dink, you're talking live today. I've been reading Franz Barden's Initiation to Hermetics today. Any pointers or thoughts on his work?
Well, I kind of, I think his work is great. If I had to say anything as a pointer, I'd point out that it's made, he wanted it to be called a true portal to initiation, but that title was already taken and he couldn't use it, so he had to use something else. But it's a training guide, you might say. So you're expected to go step by step through it and attain those things in each step. So it's really a training system. It's not so much a guide you can pull something randomly out of and use unless you have some already established magical abilities.
So Jono really says, at the risk of giving unwanted, unsolicited advice, are you propping up the microphone with a cell phone? No. Noise stopped now. Okay.
I just heard it again though.
If you could turn off the heater, I'm getting hot. Just not because of that, but just because I'm hot. So Alexis says, but I want my children to understand these things with me too. Well, you can consider it, tell them it's a family tradition not to be shared with other people, and explain it to them in terms of nature. I mean, solstices exist it's not a matter of belief. It's about the earth rotating around the sun. So you can use that as kind of like a jumping off point to explain how the seasons progress through the year, and the change in the light and the tilt of the earth and where we are, from the sun and that kind of thing. I just turned that off.
Oh, you did? Okay.
Yes, I did. We don't usually have it in here though, okay, so I don't think that was it last time.
Well, because of what Tammy said.
Oh, that's what Jono said.
Which is the static was definitely affected.
Yeah, I didn't turn it off till after the noise stopped, though.
Yeah.
Okay. Children are really good at picking up natural stuff. You can pick up a stick, pick up a rock, and show them stuff and explain how these things are related. And give them the idea that everything is sacred and everything is alive, even if it doesn't have breath coming in and out of it. It's not, alive is not necessarily defined the same way with, to us. And it's like there's energy, it's vibrating, it exists, and in that sense, it has consciousness, some type of consciousness. So you would want to treat a rock with as much respect as you would your pet, kind of thing. So there's subtle ways that you can do that and just explain the natural world to them. They'll give them a foundation. And there's, always a not contradiction, but some people think you shouldn't teach children anything until they get to a certain age, and then they can learn stuff, decide on their own what path they want to follow. But I mean, if you're just teaching them how the world works, I don't see a problem with it. When my granddaughter was in the first or second grade, I think, was when I told her I was a witch. Because it was around Halloween and she was dressing as a witch or talking about witches, and I said, well, witches are real. I'm a witch. And she just kind of went, she doesn't remember it now, but definitely don't want to hide from your children. Luo says summer solstice is celebrated in the Northern Europe as Jan Day, St. John's Day. Jono says, Mark, how much time do you have as far as explaining Barden and how to do that? Luo says, jumping over fire and everything all night long. Mary says, welcome, Mark. Tammy says, whatever Siofra was just doing, static was definitely affected. Sundrop says, we're cold over here with the air on and hot with it off. I suffered today. I'm sorry. Luo says, I believed everything was alive, even rocks, before I started school, and there I was laughed at for that. It turns out my childhood intuition was correct. Yes. Grumpy Owl says, E.A. Keating is someone who puts the demonic in a positive light, but his channel and other social media platforms were shut down because he was hinting at human sacrifice as being beneficial, and one of his followers took it seriously and committed murder.
Toledo.
Oh, wow. That's disturbing. Yeah. And, I mean, I know the reason for sacrifice, not human necessarily, but when I was healing the cow and the cow died while I was still in it, as it were, and I got pulled out to the other side with the cow's death, I then understood that animal sacrifice in certain traditions is a way of opening up that door between our side and the other side, and you can ride that energy wave going through it and get pulled out of your body and go commune with the spirit beings, I guess, of your whoever. So I understood that there's an actual magical reason for it in that sense, but it's not something I do or would ever do because it's just not me. But there's a lot of different traditions out there. But human sacrifice, definitely not something I'm into. Tammy says, my grandchildren tell everyone their grandma is magical. Well, that sounds nice. I share stories with them. We do crafts. Yes, and crafts are a good way to get children involved in magical concepts and ideas because they have the basis for it. And then later on, things will come together and make sense. Grumpy Owl says, that guy changed. He was the one I learned the LBRP, but he tossed that practice. Okay.
I still do it on occasion myself, just not very often, because I don't feel like I need it very often anymore, but I once did it for a long time, a couple of years, all the time.
Yeah, and it was a good thing. That was a part of your practice to clear yourself out.
Yeah.
So Bobby says, hello, Siofra. I used to be Phoenix Claw. I'm back. Glad to see you. Welcome back. Phoenix Claw / Bobby. Propo. Nice to see you again.
By the way, the buzzing does seem to have left at this point. Maybe it was related to having the cell phone on.
The cell phone wasn't here last week. So, Shay says, hello all. Hi, Shay. Nice for you to drop in on your little bitty time off. So, I had a weird communication from somebody on Facebook this week, which was just plain bizarre and had a lot of sexual innuendo in it, disguised as the idea of learning how to do self-love. I kind of blocked the individual. I didn't kind of, I did. I thought about it for a day and I thought, yeah, that's really not okay. So it sort of surprises me that people do that. They just like send messages like that to other people. It's very bizarre. I have a hard time understanding it because I would never do anything like that. Jana says, one of your greatest gifts to me was directing me towards Barden. My best advice is first read through the entire first book, then go back and practice for the rest of your life the way he says.
Pretty much my advice too, and yeah, he's pretty much in my pathway.
Yep.
Barden, so.
Shay says,
my pathway.
Lovely happy face and hearts.
Yep.
To go along with the roses.
Cool.
But hey. But yeah, I mean, it sort of brings up the whole reason for boundaries. It's like the choices that you make all along the path determine what happens to you and what kind of a path you end up with. If you accept that kind of a invitation from somebody who knows where it would lead, I've gone through enough to know that that's not a path for me, whatever it was that guy thought he was selling. Bobby says, I would like to have your advice on how to protect my energy. I'm an empath and it's exhausting. Yes, and it is a challenge for empaths. I've got a bunch of videos on, being an empath and surviving being an empath and different exercises that you can use and different stones that you can wear to try and help with that. Knowing your own boundaries is paramount, because if you know yourself and you have good boundaries, then you can start developing the abilities to recognize when something's coming at you from somewhere else, and then you can deflect it away. You can get the information without having to experience it, and that is very useful. The information is fine. The experiencing someone's, tortured agony, existential crisis, loss, grief, whatever, physical pain and so forth is not necessarily helpful. It doesn't put you or leave you in a position to actually help anybody at that point, because then you're just a pile of mess.
Yeah, and if somebody's just projecting at you, I used to have a boss, and I could tell long before he got to work whether he was angry or not, because I could feel that anger coming. So one thing that can be helpful if you need to is to pretend your aura is like a steel ball bearing and it bounces everything back, but that's going to kind of cut out everything. So
that's an emergency.
Use that, emergency short-term use on somebody who's like really blasting you.
And if people are getting too close to you, I recommend pretending you're a porcupine and putting out your quills. It'll usually make people back up a bit because they're like, they don't know why they're feeling uncomfortable, but all of a sudden it's just like, oh. So that can help. Yeah. But you just have to find out, find the different things, the different tactics that work for you, and make sure you have enough time to be by yourself so that you can clear yourself out and do the self-nurturing and stuff that you need to do, whatever self-healing work you're doing. And, whether that's going outside and laying on the ground. In a really emergency, when I've taken on something I didn't want, like when we walked into the store and ended up in front of a bunch of knives from Nazi Germany that were real, and I was about to throw up all over the floor. We got me to a park as quickly as possible, and I just threw my body face down on the ground and just laid out everywhere I could and just like let the earth take it from me so I could get grounded again and not feel that. So yeah, I mean, the more skill you have with controlling your abilities, the better off you're going to be. And having extreme abilities means you have to have extreme skills if you're going to survive. So you develop them and do what you can. And remember that it's not all at once. It's not it's not a one-size-fits-all. So if one tactic doesn't work, try another one. It's like some people, certain stones they're comfortable with, certain ones they're not. So it's always that kind of caveat that it's what you find that works well for you. that's important. Water, letting water, taking showers, washing hands, taking baths, that kind of thing can help get other people's energy out of you and kind of, clear you up and so forth. So, yeah. We're going to do our own sort of recharging this year because it's been 4 years since we were able to do that. So we need that for ourselves too. Grumpy Al says, I just wanted to give an example of the dangers of that kind of practice that make it sound beneficial, but to each their own, I guess.
Yeah, and I agree that people run into stuff. You can read, there's a pretty well-known Western magician, Lon Duquette, who has some books out on the subject of dealing with some of the goetic beings. And while they're mostly turn out okay for him through weird coincidences and things, he also relates some particular things that happened to him that seem to have been caused by the evoking of them also. And I suspect, though I don't know Lon Duquette personally, so I can't say.
We've met him a couple times.
Yes, we've met him a couple times, but I've read his books, and he's probably one of the foremost exponents of actually using that. But I say use the equivalent of a grimoire that's not, that's basically a better one than the goetic one, and that's Barden's Book of Spirits, which are the positive beings and not the demonic negative ones. Again, there's no reason to work with a negative being unless you want to create negative effects. And it's not that they're necessarily demonic and evil. I think that's a
judgment.
Yeah, a judgment. But they have negative jobs to do. I mean, just like getting mold, mold breaks down things and renews the forests, but you don't want it in your cottage cheese. So one of those kind of things, if you're trying to do something positive, for sure, use a positive being. Why not? And there are all kinds of things you can accidentally run into. Blon himself got his eyes all full of abramelin oil one time, and to the point where he was worried he was going to lose his eyesight. All apparently caused by the demon that he had evoked, but then it turned out he got the result he wanted. But work with beings that help you out and don't make it more negative.
Well, one of the other things is that in his philosophy, and a lot of people that work with them, is that they're not real, they're just projections of your own subconscious.
Right, so if it's in me already, what's the problem with working with it? And
I disagree with that wholeheartedly after meeting some in person.
Well, I do too. I mean, in an ultimate sense, maybe they are. But people, practically speaking, are not cognizant and cannot work with that ultimate sense that lets all that be so. And anyway, even so, the being exists. I mean, in a way, the whole universe exists within yourself. So there's an argument to that if you can sense it, it exists within you, but still. If you ask me, it's all intellectualism. And if you're going to be smart, you better treat them like they're real external beings and keep yourself out of trouble.
Yeah. So, Tammy says, I got the feeling that messenger was looking for some type of payoff, not necessarily monetary. Yeah, I think energetic vampirism was what that individual was after and was hoping they could draw me in. So, yeah, I agree. Bobby says, stones do help. I used them. Recently, I got a big black kyanite. I also use aegerin, and black tourmaline to help with my boundaries. Yeah, and those are good ones. I have both black kyanite, black tourmaline, and black spinel are all really good for that kind of thing. Lulu says, I imagine I am in a see-through bubble. Yeah, I have a see-through bubble too, and my bubble changes colors depending on the kinds of thoughts people are sending at me. And so if they're sending negative energy at me, it turns into a mirror where it comes in and bounces it back at them. So making people responsible for their own internal stuff is my philosophy. Sundrop says, what are your thoughts on lavender oil for sleep by my bed and peppermint oil in the shower for waking up? Well, they're both well known for those properties. It's going to depend upon whether you have any allergies to them or not. And whenever you're using actual essential oils, don't ever put them directly on your skin unless you put them in a carrier oil and dilute them first. Some of them come that way already, but even a pleasant essential oil can burn the skin, and it will go straight through your skin into your bloodstream and so forth. So you want to, when you first start using them, find out how you are affected by them. Like chamomile is supposed to be really good for calming the stomach and making tummy aches go away. It makes the opposite for me. If I drink chamomile tea, I feel sick to my stomach. So everybody is different. So that's the thing to remember when you're learning new things, is you find something that works for you, that's fantastic. That doesn't mean it's going to work for everybody, because we all have different bodies and things like that that we have to deal with.
Different minds and different mental balances and everything, so yeah.
Bobby says cold water, really cold, really does a major difference. Some attachments are getting away after the shower.
Yeah, I just have a hard time taking that cold water, but it really does work.
Well, if you think you have someone's energy in you, you can put a 2x4 kind of thing or a plank across the bathtub, and that you can sit on, and then turn on the tap and put your hands and your feet in the water, and it'll pull external influences out of you right away without having to get into the water. So that's a good one to just kind of keep in mind. Sundrop says, I can't take a spiritual bath, but how about a spiritual shower?
Absolutely.
Yes. What you can do is you can get, a mesh bag of some kind, and then put herbs in it or stones in it that you want to have the influence of to help you with whatever you're doing, and tie it to the shower head so that the water goes through it before it hits you, and that can be a fun thing to do. Carol Lee says, I just got on. What did I miss? Everything. I don't know how to say what you missed. Jono says, as an empath, if you could only ever leave the house with one magical item to shield from other people's energy, only one, what would it be? Your tiger's eye, a specific wristband?
I'd go with a tiger's eye myself.
Well, my tiger's eye is my go-to, and I wear it a lot, sometimes 24 hours a day for months at a time, so that would be an obvious one. It's charged up really well for doing that. But if I didn't have anything, I'd still have my wits and my control of my energy field, so I wouldn't theoretically need to have anything with me at this point. Bobby says, do you know the videos of E.A. Keating? What do you think of him and what he does? Someone just mentioned him for the first time, and it sounds like we're not familiar, but it sounds like he's gone down a dark path. So we have nothing much to say. Bobby says, yes, I agree, Jono. Carol Lee says, a black tourmaline crystal point pendant. Jono says, Bobby. Mary says, once you told me to imagine a rubber band connecting me and a person I want to be cut from, and take big scissors and cut the band snaps back on them. That helped so much. Oh, that was a good idea I had. These things just sort of happen spontaneously, and I don't always remember them, so thank you for giving that back to me. I appreciate it. Grumpy Al says, I found some of Barden's ebooks right here on YouTube. It's better to have the actual book, but there's some available on here, which is good.
Yeah, his first three, which are his actual instruction course, are available for free, I believe, at this point, if you search for them, because they're public domain. I might be mistaken, but I think they're available out there.
Yeah. Bobby says, wow, good advice, Siofra. Thank you. All right, good. Sundrop says, is it true that crystals can disappear? Well, yeah, sometimes they seem to go missing, and I blame the fairies sometimes, or the crystal just doesn't want to have, is not the right crystal for me. I still have one crystal that hasn't come back, even though we've cleaned everything around the area up so far. So, and it was one that when I touched it, I got a weird reaction to it. So I'm thinking it left because of that, but I don't know. Things go, they come. Mary says, I miss my bathtub too, but sometimes I just soak my feet in a magical bath since I can't do my whole body. Yeah, you do what you can. You know, that's the way it is. It's like adapt to what your body allows and what your environment allows, what your circumstances allow, and you know, if you can't do something physically, like you're not allowed to practice in front of anybody but everyone or anyone else because they're going to find out what you're doing, do it in the mental plane and be as elaborate as you want to in that and build up your power there until you get to a place where you can just be and do whatever you want and have your stuff with you in physical form. Because if you do that, and you do that well enough, your tools will start coming to you as soon as your space is available. It's kind of interesting. It's like you're attracting them.
Stuff will filter down from the mental plane down through the astral plane and make an occurrence on the physical plane. Takes a while usually for things to manifest down that way.
Well, that's what we did at the prison with the prisoners.
Mm-hmm.
We did everything on the mental plane, and we did like sometimes full rituals and stuff like that on the mental plane. And because they're not allowed to have physical items, the idea that the prison system has of a wand is basically a pencil that's not sharpened. That is a wand. They can buy like a pentagram, but it's so expensive the way they have their money, you know, with the way they get paid so little, couple dollars or something. So it's a and the one, our prison system here, when it was up and running, I mean, we had a full-on library of material that they could go and read and stuff like that. So that was good. But yeah, depending on where you live, it's going to be different. And people have a lot of assumptions about things. I mean, there's a group of people that if they find out that you're a pagan, they assume that you're worshiping demons and working for Satan. And they don't see a difference between what we do in reality and what they think we do, because in their reality that's the only other option of doing. So yeah, it's too bad. It makes me sad and sometimes annoyed.
Well, it's to their detriment, though. In the end, the people who can insist, you know, who think that there's only one way to do things, you have to worship the Christian God, that's the only way to do things, or whatever, they're only harming themselves in the end. Hopefully they don't harm a bunch of innocent bystanders in them, you know, while they're at it. But it's like bad drivers, you know. Like, well, be all right if they wipe themselves out, but the problem is they
usually take other people with them that had nothing to do with it. So Bobby says, is it better to wear around the wrist or the neck? Crystals, I mean. I know there's lots of different purposes and things and effects. Well, the piece of tiger eye that I use, I wear around the neck. And I sleep with that on a lot. I took a bath yesterday, so it was in the bathroom, and someone else was in the bathroom before I came in here, so I put on my Sarasvati and a piece of lapis instead. But when I'm going into like a large department store kind of situation where I know there's going to be a lot of people, I have different bracelets that I put on my wrists. I can't really sleep with them. They irritate my wrist. You know, it's like, what is that? And my arm doesn't like it. But when I'm shopping, you know, I have up to 8 I'll wear at a time. I'll, you know, wear black tourmaline, smoky quartz, black spinel, ruby matrix. Sometimes I have a lapis one I sometimes wear. I have aventurine, or not the green, but the orange aventurine. Maybe it's agate. Yeah, so it just, and I put them on different wrists for different purposes. Usually the stuff I'm trying to keep negative stuff out of me, I put on my left because I don't want to receive negative stuff. And if I want, and the positive stuff I want to accept, I put on the right so that, you know, yeah. But again, it's going to be what works for you. Some people put the stones in their bra. Some bras now have pockets. And some witches have discovered these bras with pockets. I've heard about them. I don't have one myself, but, you know, it's like, and you can have them in pockets and whatever. And I do a lot of some of my necklaces that I wear, like the ruby emerald necklace that I have. I'll sometimes wear that. I'll wear my Tibetan prayer box that's got a bunch of my stones in it that I've put in. And no one knows what's in it but me, you know. So, and different necklaces and stuff I have, I put on at different times depending on how I'm feeling and if I want to like have the energy of that particular stone around my neck or not. So, yeah, no real specifics, but it's just really going to depend on you. Sundrop says, my mom knows I'm on a witchy path, but she's not interested, and that's okay. I told her I wanted to stay awake to watch you. She asked who you were. I said a witch. She said okay. You give good advice and answer questions.
Well, that's cool. I'm glad you're getting at least some...
Proper instruction?
Well, at least some ability to investigate the subject.
Yeah.
You know, when I was younger, I was absolutely forbade. I had to turn 18 before I could study anything like that.
Yeah. Sundrop says, I share good, helpful, witchy things with my mom. She'll listen, but only so much, so I know what to say and what not to say. Well, yes, and that's just respect. Because, you know, no one can change unless they want to. You can't change someone else. You can't change their mind. You can't truly convince them of anything unless they have decided internally that they want to.
That they want to change, yeah.
Right. It has to come from within if it's going to be genuine. People can pretend to change in order to make someone else happy, but that never lasts because it's not real. We were having a talk about making, like, New Year's resolutions and stuff like that, and I said, I've never made a New Year's resolution. I'm either going to change a behavior or I'm not going to change a behavior, and having a special day set aside to say I'm going to start changing on this day makes no sense to me. It's like, change or don't change. So Julia says, to the point of wearing stones or some sort of item for various purposes, including protection, these items do not have to be visible to work for the most part, so they don't lose efficacy if hidden.
Very
yeah.
true.
And that's why I was talking about, you know, sticking them in your bra or your pant pocket or whatever, you know. It's for you. No one else needs to know that they're there. Although I get some interesting reactions to my stone bracelets sometimes. Bobby says, do you know a crystal or stone that helps to have a good night's sleep? Good night sleeps are tricky.
Yeah.
I think a Larimar would probably be really a good stone to help because it brightens the spirit and brings in joy and happiness. So it seems like it would be nice for that. I'm not sure about it making you sleepy though.
In general, earth type of stones, one that's heavy and weighty, that type of thing, can help. So like hematite or a piece of fossilized wood, something.
I have various stones I stick under my pillow at different times. So Carolee says, my mom knows my witchy vibes. She doesn't mind it. My dad don't either, which is nice.
Yeah.
My mother accepts the fact that I'm a witch, but she doesn't understand it. And she took a class to try and understand it. And she took a class from a traditional coven of witches that were Dianic. So she still didn't understand it. That was nice of her to try, but she didn't ask me first, which would have been smarter. But hey, we did have a dialogue, but she sent me all kinds of strange books after she took that class. So yeah.
Yeah, for those who don't know, a lot of the Dianic stuff is somewhat anti-male.
It depends. There's certain Dianic groups that actually have men in them. There's
Yes.
two different
Well,
Dianic paths or traditions.
Well, yeah, and I know a Dianic witch who married a man, so, you know.
But, yeah. But my mother took it from the other kind. She took it from the no male god of any kind, no male energy of any kind. So she was very confused because, you know, I was with him. She's like, I don't understand. Mark says, I'm drawn to quartz. I got a Vogel crystal last year, cut from Lemurian crystal from the Yucatan. and I'm learning to work with it. Are you familiar with Marcel Vogel's research? Any thoughts? No, I'm not familiar with his particular research on crystals. I mean, I'm certainly familiar with a lot of different crystals, and yeah, so, but no. And I like all kinds of crystals. Grumpy Owl says, I heard if a crystal goes missing, it went elsewhere to serve a purpose. This thought helped solidify magic for me when I was a fresh beginner. Sundrop says, my niece practices magic, Santeria, and hoodoo, but unfortunately we are not close. I would go to her. That's a very different kind of magic than what we're into, but it is a traditional form for sure. Lulu says, I've been sleeping with selenite. I have too, sometimes. I have difficulties calming my mind, so I hold on to selenite to calm me down. Also have a quartz under my pillow. Yeah, selenite is one of the ones I often end up having under my pillow or in my hand. It helps to clear out my energy field. I find it very useful for, clearing out things that I might not have noticed were just hanging about and brightening up my aura. So, yeah. Sundrop says she's been practicing 10 years. She's a witch, too. Carol Lee says, I have an amethyst under my pillow, and amethysts are known to be very calming and soothing, and good antidepressants. So, yeah. There's a lot of wonderful crystals out there. When I went to the crystal shop the week before, I got to play in all sorts of piles of crystals. It was lots of fun. I'm sure the guy who was there was enjoying watching me communicate with the crystals and finding out if this one wanted to go home with me or not. It's like, no, apparently not. Okay. And picking up another one. Yep, this one wants to come. I have to take this one. So that's how I choose. Mary says, I've never heard of Dianic. I am interested. No gods, no men. Wondering if this is offensive to men. What are your thoughts about it? Well, I mean, it's just another kind of way of dealing with it. And it's attractive to a lot of lesbians and other parts of the queer community because of that, and women that have been abused by men. It's not like it's a negative thing in and of itself. It's just a different way of interacting with it, because the goddesses have just as many male attributes as the male gods have female attributes. I mean, they're like a mix. They're not like a single force kind of thing.
I think personally, I'm not offended by it at all in the least, unless, I'd have to say individual people. A lot of the people are women who are very disheartened with men and disgusted with the way they've been treated and things like that, which is fine. So, but if somebody's not being rude to me personally, the idea doesn't offend me at all, even though I think it's unbalanced. And so not ideal for development, but I certainly understand that some women want to practice witchcraft and they've been so abused and damaged by men in their life that they don't want to deal with them, and that's perfectly acceptable to me, and I don't find it offensive, though, I'm sure there's people out there that find everything offensive. It doesn't matter what it is. So I'm sure some do, but personally it doesn't bother me. I just think it's perhaps a little off the mark, but maybe that's what they need for right now, till things get better, or they have a different life where they're not abused or something. Not that they're all abused. I don't want to imply that I think that either. So yeah, generally it doesn't offend me at all. I'm not so interested in it, but that's all I could say about that.
When I was in the all women's group, I was offended. We had a group of militant lesbian feminists that were in there who were very actively ignoring all things. I mean, I had a man standing next to me, a coven mate came up, and I've never been in a situation where someone pretended a live person who was breathing standing next to me didn't exist. And I was offended by that. I thought it was incredibly rude. But, again, it's just one of those things.
That's an individual. That's not a generalized practice.
Right. Mary says, laugh out loud. I had been more just into goddesses, but I've recently got more into the horn god and Pan. Yeah. I think the horn god was probably horn god, Pan, Kerninos were my first real male god energies. And reading Starhawk's book helped me introduce me to them as positive male role models.
And of course, I can see that how for some people that would be hard to accept that energy, as a woman, just because.
Bobby says, selenite is awesome, but now much more expensive. It is worth it. And Larimar, sure thing. I have a huge peace pendant. Cool. Yeah, I got a nice chunk of Larimar. They didn't have any at the store down south of us when I was there. Sundrop says, have you heard of a crystal that's bad for high blood pressure? I can't remember the name. I read if you have high blood pressure, you shouldn't wear it. Well, if you remember the name, let me know.
Yeah, that doesn't occur to me, but I do believe I've seen a bloodstone listed for use with high blood pressure. I haven't tried it
to make
for
it
that.
go down, not
To make it go down, yes,
Right.
for bloodstone. Yeah.
And this is like there's one that she's afraid will make it go up. Yes, and Bobby says bloodstone for blood pressure.
Yeah.
So yeah, we're all on the same page. And bloodstone is interesting. I was in the mall a few years back, and somebody had all these stones, pendants, and stuff like that on the wall. And I was looking at them, and I was looking at a bloodstone, and he says, "You know what this is? You know what this represents?" And I said, "Well, yeah, this is the goddess's blood." No, this is Jesus's blood. I'm like, no. Before Jesus, this was considered a stone for the goddess, and the red stone in the jasper is considered her menstrual blood. So that kind of predates your. He just kind of looked at me sideways. I like to correct people. To be accurate, you are misinformed. But yes. And like I said, everyone's going to have different reactions to things, so just because it lists it as this is bad for you doesn't mean it actually is going to be bad for you.
Yeah, and plus your own intention and thoughts on the matter are going to affect it a lot. If you expect it to help your high blood pressure, there's a lot more chance that it will than if you just carry it around, with no expectation.
Right, if you're trying to lower it.
Yeah.
Grumpy Owl says, it is unbalanced, especially if they treat the opposite sex like they don't exist or with some kind of malice. It's toxic. Well, that's my opinion. I was asked to be on a panel in the 80s of where women's whatever was going and a women's festival. And it was pretty interesting because it was in Prince Rupert, British Columbia on the coast. And there was a small community there. It's a very small city, and the men who were partners of the women who were putting the event together volunteered to do childcare and cooking and that kind of thing. And some of the women who were there were offended by the fact that there were men anywhere on the premises. And I'd heard rumors about this. I wasn't initially supposed to be part of this panel. It just sort of happened because some of the women left in protest because there were men on the premises because they were guaranteed a safe space. And so I knew the subject was going to come up, and so the question, of that came up, and I looked at everybody and I says, "What makes you think that women are safe?" It was like, what? What makes you think that women are safe? There's just as much domestic violence in women-on-women relationships as there is on women and men relationships. It's about power and control. It's not about sexuality or gender identity or any of that other stuff. Yeah. So yeah, it is interesting, but it was a not expected experience that I had being on a little platform with 3 other women declaring where women's rights or whatever were going in the future. It was hysterical. So, Mary says, if I had known about Dianic last year, I might have gotten into that, but then I consciously started to be open to divine masculine energy. I'm happy with that decision, though.
Personally, I feel like a person should be okay with both. I try to be okay with both. I have no problem with invoking goddess energy or invoking God energy into myself. I think that everybody needs to have a balance.
Well, yeah, we're not just one thing or another, and there is no single trait that's just one or the other. It's just a definitional thing that we use to decide what is and what isn't male or female, which is kind of archaic at this point. So Julia says, high five, Siofra, about women being safe or not. Yeah. I thought it was an obvious question. Apparently I am sweating. So have we discussed, Sundrop says, how to raise energy during spell work? Well, probably we've discussed it from time to time, but I don't think we have this time. I mean, the reason how to raise energy has to do with like engaging all of your attention, right? So the things that you use in the spell, knowing their associations, agreeing with those associations, feeling comfortable that this is what these things mean, and putting them together in this way means this thing. And then, consciously putting the ingredients together while you're doing it. And then taking that energy of understanding and stuff like that and imprinting it. It's kind of like, any rock crystal can do pretty much anything you tell it to, but you have to tell it to do it.
Yeah, imprint
it. And that is what charging it up is you are giving it instructions to follow, what you want it to accomplish, what your intent is, and the energy you give it when you're putting it together is the energy it has to use in order to make that happen. That's sort of why you raise energy during spell work. So if it's a important thing that you're trying to do, you want to create the environment where you're doing it so that it is conducive to not being distracted. You want to have, not people coming in and knocking on your door and interrupting you and that kind of thing. You want to have the lighting that feels right for you. You want to have the objects around you that make you get into the right mindset for doing something like that.
Yeah, so, things like that help. If you want to use like planetary colors for things, because Mars is martial, of course. Venus is loving and
healing,
and lunar clairvoyance, things like that. So you could have a green stone for Venus, or a red stone for Mars, or iron. Piece of iron, piece of hematite is great for Mars because of the iron relationship there. Or you could have, if you're doing Mars, you do like red colors and things like that. Or the same thing with any of the other planets. If you're doing Luna, you probably want to probably not to do that in the brightest light. You probably want to have dim room light when you're doing that. Maybe
piece of selenite and moonstone.
Piece
of willow.
Like that. Maybe water scrying or something would be associated with lunar.
Yeah, that's the thing, is like everything you do is a part of the spell and part of raising the energy in order to do the spell. And then you can talk to the element that you're working with, or the planet that you're working with, or the beings associated with the element or the planet, and call them to come in to help with charging it, make them aware of it.
The sun is one of those, and then again the elements or other powers you can use to charge something up. There's actually a lot of them. If you really get into it, you can use the zodiac signs and colors and things.
So Bobby says, what do you recommend for protecting a room? Is there a stone I can leave near the door and my peace shall be good during the night? Well, you can put a stone in every corner in your room. And if you're trying to protect your room, I would put, things like the tourmaline or obsidian or smoky quartz or whatever to trap or absorb any negative energy that might be trying to disrupt your sleep and drain any energy out. If you're going to do that, really visualize a root going down to the earth so you don't have to pick it up every month and cleanse it. If you have it self-cleaning, so if it absorbs negative energy, it automatically goes down,
dumps it to
the roots into the earth, and it doesn't matter whether you're on the 3rd floor or the 50th floor, you can still visualize that going down into the earth.
Probably good to use an earth-related stone like that. Again, hematite, something like that connects easily with the element of earth. Hematite's also kind of Saturn-related, but that's another. It's complicated.
Right. Negative energy usually
Yeah,
smoky
down to
quartz,
the earth.
smoky
something that gets it
quartz,
down into the
obsidian,
earth,
or
yeah.
some standard kinds of stones that are used to doing that. They sort of have that kind of a natural tendency to start with. So if you have it automatically going down, then you don't have to worry about having to cleanse them. And one of the other things you can do before going to sleep is you can cast a circle around your room and around your bed, and that's a good way to practice, to learn about how to cast the elements and so forth. You can learn a lot that way. I did it when I started doing that. I did it physically, like with my finger. I did it emotionally or astrally with my feelings. I did it mentally with my thoughts, and I would practice different ways of doing it and learn different aspects of the element that way, sort of absorb it.
Yeah.
And
that is a point that if it's more effective if you divide it up into the three: mental, astral, and physical, and charge each specifically: protection mental plane, protection astral plane, protection physical plane.
yeah,
or
so
you can
people
just-
thinking at you, or
Yeah, if you just go at it, it's and you just want to do the one aspect for protection. You don't have to get so detailed either. Just want to do the one action for protection. That's fine, and not have to specify mentally and astrally. I'd recommend all three, but of course it's more work, so it depends on how much energy you've got and how much oomph you can put into it.
well, funny thing, I was doing it, I think it was astrally one night, and I fell asleep before I finished. I fell asleep when I was drawing the elemental west pentagram, and partway through the night I had this sensation of cold water splash my face. It woke me up, and then I went, oh, right, I didn't finish the circle, so I started from there and kept going until I finished, and I could go back to sleep. But you get a routine kind of thing going, and it can sort of program you to get into the right frame of mind to be able to go to sleep and rest. And
Yeah, and I might
and
add
that kind of thing.
whatever method you decide to use, if you repeat it, it sort of becomes
It makes a
stamped or
groove.
ingrained on
Right.
the universe, like a groove. Yeah, so
Creates that groove
It'll
for
get
you.
easier and easier, and it'll have more and more energy build up over time and repetitions.
Bobby says, in general, astral dreams at night, are they trustworthy? I guess it isn't the same as a soul journey, is it? Astral dreams at night, I mean, to the extent that anything we think is trustworthy, everything is always suspect when it comes to that, because thoughts are sort of free-flowing and they're not constrained by reality and physical reality, and, whether they really exist or not, which is one of the fun things about dreams. You can do stuff in a dream, ride on a dragon, or, go fly out to the stars or whatever, and you're not constrained by the fact that you don't have a spaceship and whatnot, and enough money to buy a space on a spaceship. So
One thing that's, if it keeps repeating, it has usually, you should take extra note of that and see if you can figure out why. If it keeps repeating, it has kind of a special importance usually.
yeah, and as you get more experience with it, like I can tell the difference between a regular dream and a precognitive dream. There are certain markers that happen in my dreams that let me know that this is something I need to pay attention to. And for me, the biggest one is that I have the dream early in the night, and then every dream after that, I tell the people in that dream about the dream I had. And then I get another dream, and I tell those people the dream I had, so I will remember the dream when I wake up. And so that makes it significant. But, you always have to use that sort of litmus test to things to decide whether it means something or not. It's one of those things. Alexis says, do we see real spirits in our dreams? Sometimes, yeah. I mean, you can have a person who's passed over come visit you in your dreams to try and let you know that they're okay, or give you a message or a warning, or other spirit beings. Moira showed up in my dreams quite a bit when we first started the channeling work and stuff, and she would show up and tell me things, show me things. I had one in particular that I remember where I was on a bunch of rocks, there was boulders everywhere, and she was on the other side of this large gap, and I wasn't sure if I could actually make the jump, and she's like, yes you can. Just will yourself over here. And then I did, so it's not just all the things that you're experienced, what you've watched, what you've read, what you've absorbed, what you've thought, what you've talked about, but it can also be, other stuff from past lives or other people.
Yeah, they really take individual interpretation because it's all based on everybody's particular symbolism in their brain, how they think.
Grumpy Owl says, one goddess I admire is Kali. I hear she can be frightening, but what she represents is admirable to me, being a protector of women. I wish I could be like her sometimes, stop the violence happening to the indigenous women who are missing and who are found murdered. Yeah, Kali is a very powerful goddess, and she is very protective, and she is one of the goddesses I work with. Alexa says, I feel like I have, but I don't know. Seen spirits, real spirits in a dream. Alexa says, why do you think sleep paralysis happens?
Most of it seems to be a state between, where you're just managing to maintain your consciousness when your body falls asleep a little bit. And so your body is in the sleep state and it can't move, and your consciousness just lags a little behind and isn't asleep yet. Preliminary to like some astral traveling and stuff, but that's my thought on the matter.
Well, yeah, I mean, your body is always going to have paralysis when you're sleeping. Otherwise, everything you dream about, you'd be up and doing it.
Well,
so if you dreamt about running down the street, you might get out of bed and go out of your house and start running down the street. So to prevent you from harming yourself while you're dreaming, your brain paralyzes those parts of your body so that you can think it without making it happen.
Yeah, and unless you get very, very sick like I did once.
Yeah, he had pneumonia and it was really bad, and the part of the brain that does that stopped working. So he would be having dreams and I would watch them play out. His hands, his body would act out the dream he was having, which was very bizarre. And sometimes when that happens, it never repairs itself, but fortunately it did. So I was glad of that. Alexa says, in explaining the type of scenarios that happen while sleep paralysis is happening, that's because it's a panic reaction to not being able to move, and you're going to conjure something bad. That's, I think, generally speaking, why that's what people see, is something that is dangerous or scary or whatever, because your lizard brain is going like, we're being attacked, we can't move our body, something is happening. And so your dream self projects that into the room, even if your eyes are open, and yeah, that kind of thing. Sundrop says, have you experienced falling in your sleep? Well, what does it mean? Yes, I have experienced falling in my sleep, and when I let myself fall, I have often fallen out of my body and into the astral. And I have hit bottom and not died. So I think that's just a total fallacy. So Vanessa V says, hello everybody, super late, but thought come by to say hi anyway. Hey Vanessa, how you doing? And Ian says, hi to Vanessa and welcome. Yeah, the thing is that subjective reality is that, subjective. And the brain wants to make a narrative to make sense with the sensations that it's having. So whatever it is that's going on, the brain is going to conjure a story to try and fill in the gaps when there's maybe even nothing there at all, just to try and make a scenario that makes sense to the brain.
Yes, because pattern recognition ability, or it invents patterns where there aren't any sometimes, looking for them.
Vanessa V says, doing okay, just had a energy therapy, but didn't something. Lewis says, I've walked on air and flew so many times in my dreams. My favorite, yeah.
Yeah, me too. I just wish I could do it in person. In my dreams, I usually do it by willpower. I will myself up. But I found in my dreams, I eventually get tired and my willpower starts failing. And then after I've flown a few times, I can't get up as high, and then I get weak. And I guess it's some built-in thing in me that if I'm flying, it must take
energy,
effort. Yeah.
Yeah.
And in a dream, it doesn't, but still.
Grumpy Al says, sleep paralysis, in my experience, is your body being stuck in the process of astral projection. Some people do move in their sleep, even animals. I watched a horse sleeping and he was acting out. Oh yeah, with the running of the feet.
Our cat does
But
too.
he didn't jump up and run across the field. That's what we're talking about. We're not talking about minor movements here. Bobby says, are your live always on Sundays each week and same hour? Yes, they are. And Tammy says, enjoyed the chat. Have a wonderful week. Thank you. Vanessa V says, ups. I didn't feel anything. Actually felt a bit scared when the guy arrived. Everybody else said they felt wonderful. Well, that's when you were doing your therapy session. Yeah. Oops. Yeah. Didn't feel anything. Grumpy Owl says his dreams, his hooves were moving like he was going on trot and he was making noises. It was cute. Right. But he didn't get up and run. My grandfather got up and jumped on top of a dresser in his sleep and then jumped off the dresser and then jumped out of a window 2 stories up and woke up on the way down. That's the kind of thing your body's stopping you from doing. So that's what I'm saying. Yes, the horse moved and twitched, but it didn't get up and actually run across the field, which is what it would do if that part wasn't working. It's paralysis, but not complete immobility.
I found out at times when I need to awaken in a dream, sometimes I will, if I can become lucid enough in the dream to know I need to awaken, which has happened a few times, I'll usually start by trying to kick and nothing will happen. I try to move my arms and nothing will happen. I just keep working at it till I start managing to move my arms and then it wakes me up.
Same here.
Yeah.
Yeah, if I get that, if I can move a hand or an arm or a certain amount, then I can wake up. Lulu says, when I was small, 5 to 6, I actually tried to walk on air awake. It didn't work. I'm sorry. Vanessa V says, I tried to protect myself but still allow the healing. But I instinctively grabbed some stones. Do protection stones protect from everything or just the negative?
Good question.
It depends on what you charge them up for. So
you can charge them to protect against just the negative and let the good stuff in if that's how you work with them and charge them up. Yeah.
Vanessa says, I had black tourmaline, obsidian, lapis, amethyst, and a piece of amber. Well, so the black tourmaline, the black tourmaline would protect you from someone trying to intrude their energy into you for negative reasons. The obsidian would block negative energy in general from coming in. The lapis is very protective and sort of heightens your psychic abilities. The amethyst, of course, is just very comforting and helps to smooth out your energy. And the amber, I would assume, would help to bring your energy field up like electrically.
Yes, that's what I figured.
So Grumpy Owl says, I was about to say that with sleepwalking, it can be dangerous, and there have been deaths with that happening. Yes. My grandfather didn't die, but he shattered his legs completely. He had a long road of recovery ahead. It was right around the time of the Depression, too. Bobby says, Lapis Lazuli and I learned some time ago that the color blue is pure love and the negative cannot touch it. Nice.
Yeah, I might be mistaken, but it seems to me like lapis might be associated with Jupiter.
Yes, there's definitely some Jupiterian associations with lapis, and it has little gold flecks and stuff in it. So it has a little solar component. Luo says, I tell myself, wake up. It usually works, but not always. Once I actually had a child version of me appear in the dream I wanted to wake up from, and she helped me to wake up. Awesome. Good to get help. Vanessa V says, thank you. Good to know. I grabbed them because I had them at hand, because they are the ones I associate with the goddesses I've been connecting to. And that's another thing. If they have very specific associations, then all the better. Yeah. I think lapis is associated with Isis in my mind. Of course, she wears lapis around her neck, so that's probably why. Lapis and carnelian. And, you know, whenever you're going into something like, I've had some negative experiences doing guided meditations where the person who is putting the guided meditation together did not understand the potential negative consequences of putting someone they didn't know in a position and then not knowing their background or anything. When I was in massage school, So I like to know what's coming before I agree to go into it. So if I go into something like that and I don't know, I separate myself out. I have my overviewer, or the part of me that sort of monitors everything, which is very helpful if something bad is going on and you're not sure what to do, and your body is like discombobulated. Like when I had a bad reaction to some medication and was feeling suicidal, and that part of me can like monitor what's going on and tell me what to do and tell me what's happening and so forth. And so I can use that with guided meditations too. And it's like I preview the instructions, determine whether those are safe instructions for me to follow, and then follow the instructions if they've been determined to be safe. Because when I didn't do that in class, they did this whole meditation, and I'm a good meditator. I really seriously get into it when I'm doing that kind of stuff. And they put me in a room with my father, which is about the worst thing I can imagine anybody doing to me, considering who my father was. So whenever you're going to be agreeing to go to something like that, I think caution is a definite plus. And there's nothing wrong with being cautious, because it's your mind and you're in charge of it, and you shouldn't allow anyone to mess with it without your permission. So Vanessa V says tourmaline for the Morrigan, obsidian for Gwynnifer, lapis for Isis, amethyst with Caradwyn, and amber with Danu. I think it's amethyst. She says amethyst, so maybe I'm wrong. Bobby says, now I understand why my body had some reactions when I tried to wear Larimar. It's like the bad spirits in me were suffering. Well, Larimar is just a wonderful thing.
Yeah, but that's not a bad thing, because
means it's working.
If you have something that's working on getting rid of like larvae and things like that, thought forms that are around you that are negative and harmful, they will tend to be. They have a self
protection.
Well, yeah,
reaction.
They want to protect they aren't really alive, but they act like they are as far as wanting to protect themselves. And the best thing to do with that is just to starve them out. But yes, that could be a reaction like that. If you're getting rid of some negative things.
So Lou says, I gotta go, so have a great week. Ian said, bye Lou. Alexis says, can working with deities be dangerous? Well, working with anything can theoretically be dangerous, but if you're worried about working with deities, then pick the calm, relaxing, softer, energetic deities, and don't go in for Kali right out of the gate. Because the thing that's dangerous is if you need to change your energy in order to be able to work with them, and you're not prepared to change your energy in that way, you're not accepting of those changes, transformational or whatever, then it will not feel comfortable. And you don't have to put yourself through that until you're ready. So Vanessa V says, haha, yes, I tend to review everything that happens on meditations and stuff like that, except with a few people I feel I can trust. But I don't know why I feel automatically tense. Don't know why I felt automatically tense this time. Well, follow your instincts. You don't need to know on a conscious level. For all you know, the person who was doing that is a sociopath, and this is a path to get into you. I mean, it's like, and you don't have to justify it. You don't have to find out for sure if it's right. If you're feeling it, follow your instincts and protect yourself.
Yeah, I'm inclined to agree with that completely. Sometimes even if the people depends on the person doing it, they can accidentally put their negativity into you also if they're not conscious and aware that can happen. So, it could be something like that. So basically, I guess I'm just saying the same thing. Trust your instincts.
Yeah. They're there for a reason. And, the rational mind may try to talk you out of it, may try to convince you that there's no reason for you to feel that way, and everything else, but don't believe the rational mind. Listen to the irrational thing that's happening, because it's there to protect you.
And the rational mind is only one part of your whole system.
Right.
One body out of three. And
Yeah, and
There are definitely things that go beyond it or can't be explained by it that are real.
yeah, and that's the thing. Is like it's a good servant and a good tool, but when it comes to self protection, and it's the instinctive, irrational part of your brain that gets you out of a situation that could turn bad for you one way or another, and you may be picking up things you don't know consciously.
Yeah.
So, all right. So I guess our time is up, and thank you all for spending your time with us today. If you have any questions, you can certainly send them to me via email at shifersmagicalcove@gmail.com. And so, yeah. Vanessa V says, thank you. Yes, I even protected my dogs, and the guy noticed I was protecting myself. Ha! Well, if he noticed, there might have been a good reason to do it then. So Bobby says, bye all, see you next week. Grumpy Al says, thank you. Shifer and Ian, you're welcome. Vanessa V says, thank you for answering even at the end. Good week. Grumpy Al says, have a great day, everyone. Bye, guys. Well, thank you, Ruth. We really appreciate that. Mary says, good night. So, awesome talk, and we'll see you next week.
I see